Several years ago, I sent a letter to Eugene Peterson, one of my favorite authors, inviting him to write a foreword to a book I had just written. A few weeks later, I received a note from him, which gently declined the invitation. I am fast becoming an old man. The strength diminishes. I'm unable to do what I used to take on effortlessly, he explained. Then, in true Eugene Peterson form, he added a line from a Wendell Berry poem. I am an old man, but I don't think of myself as an old man, but as a young man with disabilities. I was disappointed by his answer, but loved his letter. I still have it today. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about what Peterson wrote. I probably crossed the line from fast becoming into full-blown old manhood when I turned 70 a year and a half ago. I didn't think about it much at the time. Like Wendell Berry, I could still think of myself as a young man, at least on the inside, if it weren't for the old man who peered back at me every time I looked into the mirror. Lately, however, something has changed. I don't feel young anymore. I feel my age more than I used to, and not just physically. I find myself wondering what the spiritual implications of old age might be. As a rule, our common perception of aging tends to be a negative one. We may stereotype this stage of life as our golden years, but many, if not most people, see aging through a negative filter. They view it as a time of loss and debilitation. Health declines and friends die. There may also be a feeling that we have been set aside and marginalized. Some of this comes from within. When we are younger, our work is a major contributor to our sense of identity. It also occupies most of our energies. When that disappears, it can be traumatic. We aren't sure who we are anymore. I believe this loss of a sense of self is aggravated further by an underlying suspicion that the idea of retirement is unbiblical. Christians, we've been told, should burn out rather than rust out. When I announced my retirement, the question I was asked most often was, "What are you going to do with your time?" People seemed anxious for me. One of my colleagues reproved me for even considering the idea. "You can't just do nothing," they said. One negative consequence of this anti-retirement theology is guilt by association with the old sin of sloth. It also suggests that our value is determined by how busy we are. For some, it may lead to a general perception that older saints are either unproductive dead weights in the church or that they are a drain on its attention and resources. Having a congregation that primarily consists of older people is often seen as a problem, not a strength. For the elderly, this anti-retirement rhetoric can be a source of false guilt and produce in them a sense that God no longer values them. Perhaps the greatest challenge faced by those who enter the last stage of their journey is the wrestling match with one's past that often ensues. The latter years are a season of remembering and reflection. "I'm in my anecdotage," Congresswoman and journalist Claire Booth Luce said when she was 78. It's not an accident that older people speak so much about the past. One reason is that there has been a shift in the focus of our attention. There's much more road behind us than in front. What lies before us is shrouded in mystery. We can't make reservations, create itineraries, or even nurture ambition. What is certain is known only in broad strokes. The final stage of life is a processing space. Our latter years are years of reflection that can turn into a downward spiral into the depths of regret. These regrets are not only for ourselves. They are often directed toward God, as our focus on what took place in the past inevitably leads us to ask why. We cannot always find a satisfactory answer, at least not one that we find compelling enough to assuage the disappointment we may feel. The truth is that the Bible's general perspective when it comes to aging is a positive one. Old age is spoken of as a blessing. When Scripture tells us that Job lived to be an old man and full of days, it is emblematic of blessing. In fact, in Job's case, it is a sign of restoration. In the book of Proverbs, old age is portrayed as a kind of arrival. The glory of young men is their strength. Gray hair is the splendor of the old. Proverbs 20:29 says, "What strength is to the young, age is to the old." Age is an asset, not a liability. For the old, there is also a hint of loss in this verse. The strength that is the glory of the young is no longer the possession of the old. What do they get in its place? Gray hair? Really? Is the benefit merely cosmetic? I was hoping for more. What is it that age brings to the table? First of all, and this is no small thing, old age brings length of days. In general, Scripture portrays the prolongation of life as a blessing and not a curse. More time is more opportunity. But time to do what? Old age is associated with fruitfulness in the Bible, but a specific kind. The psalmist says that those who are planted in the house of God will flourish. According to Psalm 92:14 and 15, they will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming, "The Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in him." What the psalmist describes might be characterized as an extended vision of God. Age leads to insight when God is our primary reference point. Consequently, there is often an association between age and wisdom in Scripture. It's no accident that counselors and advisors in the Bible often held the title of elder, but it isn't the case that age automatically conveys wisdom. Older doesn't always mean wiser. Ecclesiastes 4:13 observes, "Better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to heed a warning." The downside of aging is that it can produce a rigidity in thinking that leads to stubbornness and an unwillingness to receive correction. Those who are used to giving advice often find it hard to take it. However, the general principle is that time and perspective go together. The more extended our days, the more expansive our perspective. The biblical word for that perspective is wisdom. Age is the repository of memory. Remember the days of old. Consider the generations long past, Deuteronomy 32:7 admonishes. Ask your father, and he will tell you, your elders, and they will explain to you. Ironically, the stereotype of aging that we have usually focuses on memory loss. Perhaps this is the anxiety that proves the point. Maybe we know by instinct that memory is a treasure. This is lived memory, interpreted through personal experience. The biblical word for it is witness. Friendship with God is the ultimate gift that age has to offer. Genesis 48:2 describes how, at the end of his life, Jacob sat up in bed and blessed Joseph's sons. In many ways, Jacob had lived a hard life that included several disappointments, discord within his family, and great sorrow. Indeed, this was so much the case that when Pharaoh asked Jacob how old he was upon his first arrival in Egypt, the patriarch answered, "My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." But on his deathbed, sick and nearly blind, Jacob pronounced a blessing over Joseph's sons with these words, "May the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked faithfully, the God who has been my shepherd all my life, to this day, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they be called by my name and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly on the earth." That being said, any older person can tell you that if aging is a blessing, it is a mixed blessing. The Bible does not dismiss or sentimentalize the challenges that come with aging. If anything, it is uncomfortably frank about the subject. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them, Ecclesiastes 12:1 warns. The same Bible that portrays length of days as a blessing also calls them days of trouble. Scripture does indeed say that Job died old and full of days. He died on the upswing with 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He had 7 sons and 3 beautiful daughters, and every one of them was rich. Job lived to be 140 years old and saw his children's children to the 4th generation. But I can't help wondering if there were nights when that old patriarch closed his eyes and dreamt of the children he had lost. Did his heart leap with surprise to see their faces again? And when he awoke in the morning light, were his eyes wet with tears for the days that he had missed with them? We don't have to deny the real changes and challenges that come with age. We don't even have to like them. But I think we do ourselves a disservice if they are the only things we associate with the last stage of our lives. Aging does involve loss. Our capacity does indeed change. Eugene Peterson was right. Strength diminishes, interests change, and we are unable or unwilling to do some of the things we once did. We may find ourselves shaken by the years and haunted by the losses that have accumulated. I appreciate the counterpoint that I find in Jacob's testimony to Pharaoh about his own experience. He's no Pollyanna. His words are born out of 130 years of lived experience. He is honest enough not to hide from the reality of the sorrow that he has experienced. Yet Jacob's last words confirm what the author of Hebrews says was true of him and of all who are like him. Like many others, Jacob died not yet having received what had been promised. Yet Jacob died believing that the God who had made these promises had been a shepherd to him all his life, right up to the day of his death. I've often said that the primary work of the last stage of life is to let go and prepare for death. There is some truth in this. I suspect one of God's purposes for the rigors and losses that accompany old age is to pry our hands away from the life we have known so that we hold them open to the life to come. But in saying this, I think I overlooked another even more important truth. The greatest gift that aging has to offer is the opportunity to trace the hand of God in what has gone before. It is the gift of piecing together the mosaic of all that has happened and recognizing in it the hand of a shepherd.